Hi, I'm Eddie Burke. I've been the bartender at the Hollywood Improv for 40 years, and this is my podcast, Eddie's Bar at the Improv.
We are rolling.
All right. Guys, my guest tonight is the first Latina to create, write, produce, and star in her own network show called, appropriately enough, Cristela in 2014. She's appeared in a lot of episodics. She's a great stand-up. She was named one of the 10 LA comedy acts to watch in 2014 by LA Weekly, and also as one of the 13 funny women to watch in 2014 by Cosmopolitan. And this is my good friend, Cristela Alonzo.
Hi, Eddie. I think I say that every time, the same way every time I see you.
I think you do too, except it's not as nice.
I do. Well, it depends. It depends on the night.
Well, yeah, it's true. And who you're with.
Yes, no, this is true.
If you're with your evil twin, then, then I'm in for it. It
comes from love. It comes from love.
I hope so.
It's kind of like it's sibling. It's like a sibling thing, It's like, hey, like in my family, you always call people what's wrong with them, like their nickname.
Yes.
Like, hey, crooked tooth, how you doing? Say hi to your mom.
and that's what.
Sounds way worse. Hey, cancer.
I know. No, we don't have health insurance. We don't know we have cancer.
Oh, that's right. Wouldn't that be funny? It's like if you don't know you have it,
hey, it
doesn't do anything to you. That'd be like that's a great thing. I mean, we might have found the cure for all these diseases if you don't know.
So many people in my family do that, where they're like, "No, I can't go to the doctor because then what if something's wrong with me?" They find out. I'm like, "That's the point, stupid."
There are things wrong with you, Cristela, but it's not. It's more mental.
A lot. It's part of my charm, though.
It is part of your charm. It's like, well, let me ask you this. You were born in Hidalgo, Texas?
Hidalgo County. I was born in San Juan, Texas, which the big city next to it is McAllen, Texas.
All right.
Which,
What got you interested in comedy?
My family was very poor, so I was a latchkey kid growing up, and back then that's when cable TV was really new. So we were very poor, but we had to have cable TV because TV was my babysitter.
Of course.
So I would watch stand-up on TV, not knowing it was a thing. I just saw these people talk into a mic, and they would make me laugh. But I didn't know it was a job. I thought, because it looks like you're just talking into a mic,
Just having fun, huh?
And I remember when I found out it was a job, I started watching Comic Relief with my brothers. And every year I was allowed to see Comic Relief until a comic came out and was like super vulgar, and then I'd have to leave. And
that's it.
Yeah, and I want to say it was like Rich Little that got me kicked out like many years in a row. But it was this thing where I loved it, and I used to actually watch Evening at the Improv. I started seeking it out, not knowing that I was becoming a fan of it. Mm-hmm. It just,
So what hit you that said like, this is what I want to do?
My mom actually passed away, and I found myself really depressed. And, I realized the day that we buried her, the day of the funeral, I could not stop laughing. And I was actually, and I think people, I think people probably thought, like, what is wrong with this? I found myself laughing because I was telling a lot of stories about her. And people were laughing, and they would share their own stories about my mom with me, too. And the funeral was very emotional, either a lot of laughter or a lot of crying. And it hit me that crying and laughing were so connected to each other that after my mom passed away, I was pretty sad. And I needed a job. So I remember I was looking, back in the day, I was looking at a newspaper, and I saw help wanted ads. And there was, I was a server for years. So I responded to this Italian restaurant that was opening that needed servers. I went in, interviewed, and they said, "We love you. We'll call you back. The manager will interview you." Then I saw this other help wanted ad that was office work. And it was light filing, answering phones, blah, blah, blah. They didn't tell you what the company was. So I just circled it and went. And when I got there,
It wasn't Playboy.
it was the Addison Improv.
Oh, no kidding. All right.
When I parked in the parking lot and realized it was the Addison Improv Comedy Club.
Did you know about it at that point?
I knew Evening at the Improv.
Okay.
So I actually didn't know. I didn't know it was a club. I didn't know it was a chain of clubs. I saw the sign and thought, I used to watch Evening at the Improv, like, oh my God, is this connected to the show? And, and again, I come from a place where my family were very blue collar. So we always thought that work had to hurt. It was very physical, so
Right.
It's the idea of getting paid for thinking and for your thoughts is such a luxury that, it just seems excessive, for where I come from. I remember going. I interviewed. I filled out an application, turned it in. They called me back, and my sister lied. I put her as a reference on my resume because she was married and had a different last name, and I said I was her assistant at her job.
Very clever. I like that.
My sister lied for me on the resume. And I got the job, and I said that I knew how to do all this office stuff, but I had no idea. I didn't know any, I had to do the calendar for the club. I didn't know how to do any of that. I had to buy software the weekend I got that job and just started, learning how to do it.
Things have not changed anywhere at any improv because nobody still knows how to do that. I think they probably learned from you.
Actually, I started a lot of things that people still use now that I started on a whim, that I'm like, I think this looks kind of cool. And when I started the job, my job was to work. I was the office manager. So I would, when comics would go do radio, I would have to go in the morning and answer phones to sell tickets for the comics. They would do radio. They would say, call the Addison Improv, da da da. I got hired on a Friday. It was my first day. And I had to answer phones for a comic named Mitch Hedberg.
Oh,
and
wow.
I didn't know
who he was.
I didn't know who he was. But he did radio and all of the lines lit up. I want to say we had about 12 lines. All of them lit up. And I had to answer the phone. Hold, please, hold, please, hold, please. And I was like, who is this guy? Because I didn't know any comics that weren't, super famous, that were like Richard Pryor or anything,
Right.
So I told myself, I have to sit and watch this guy. What is this guy about? And I watched him. And back in that day, they would have, Mitch Hedberg had this guy, he had a friend, he knew this guy named Chuck who played the bass, and he lived in Houston. And when Mitch would play Texas, especially Dallas, Chuck would come in and play the bass in the background while Mitch did his set. And there was this.
Tell me this was a black guy whose last name was Berry, right?
And it was this thing where back then we had a smoking section. And I remember there was something so magical about seeing Mitch do his jokes that were so funny with this guy bass in the back. And then the smoke from the cigarettes that actually gave it this kind of loungy, kind of supper club kind of feel that I was like, what is this thing? I had never been in a room like that where stand-up was happening.
So was this it?
That was it. For me, I'm like, what is this? What is this? And I had tried to do theater, but, I'm Latina. And when I was in college, my teacher told
you're
me,
Latina?
I don't want to break it to you like this.
Oh,
I don't.
man.
You thought
Did
I
you
was
know
just.
that?
You thought
That's
you
it.
thought I loved the sun, but it
Wow.
turns out that I had tried to do theater, and a teacher in college told me that as a Latina I could only do West Side Story and chorus line. So
no such thing as typecasting.
yeah, exactly
right?
right. I mean, so I told myself if I was going to have a chance to perform and actually do what I wanted to do, I was going to have to write it myself. And I realized that that's what comics did. So when I started working at the office, I would sit and watch every comic that came into town. And that's when I discovered, like, we tried this new guy named Daniel Tosh on a Wednesday night, you know, and it was just like, who is this guy? And it was great to see it, because back then you could actually see the comics coming into a fan base.
Right.
So it used to be the weeks were Wednesday through Sunday, and people would come in on Wednesday, and I saw it with Tosh. They'd come and see Daniel Tosh on Wednesday, and then on Sunday, it was packed from people that came back and brought friends to see him from Wednesday. So it was this really awesome moment that I wanted to be a part of. To me, it was this thing, I'm like, what is this? I need to do it. And because my mom passed away, I started doing stand-up, and I started talking about my mom, because that's what I learned from the funeral, is that telling these funny stories made people laugh.
So you draw all of, well, not all, but a lot of your writing is drawn from your experiences.
Totally, because I always say that for me, I always believe that being personal is the best way of not getting any of your material stolen.
Right.
You know, and to me, of being personal, no one can take away your story. They might not like
Right.
what you say, but they can't refuse that that's your. They can't deny that's your story. So for me, also, I think that being personal allows the audience to connect with you in a different way than someone like a Seinfeld, who I love seeing Seinfeld, but you know, at the end of the day, I can quote like chopsticks, you know, like like the classic jokes and stuff, but the comics I connect to have a story. Like, I can watch Doug Stanhope and leave getting a feel of who Doug Stanhope is, and for me, that's the comedy I connect with. So I think I do it just because that's what I'm a fan of.
Oh, and you may just be a fan of it, but you're also awfully good at what you do. When did you get your first moment on stage? Was it at Addison?
You know, yes, it was. But here's the thing. And I think this is very common for a lot of stand-up comics. Your home club will never respect you. So it's this thing where, like, the club that you start at, they always tend to see you as this local comic, open micer. Like, they never give you the
manager,
you know.
yeah.
So for me, there was a comic named Dean Lewis who taught stand-up classes, and he also taught defensive driving, and I used to run the defensive driving program. And on Mondays, he would teach his class, and he would come in, and Dean was really funny, very funny, you know, and he worked clean, and like that was part of his stand-up class, that I took the class because the graduation was performing at the club, and that was the only way I could get stage time at the club.
At the club, okay.
So I took the class, and it wasn't about him teaching you how to write stand-up necessarily. It was him kind of just telling you how to be aware of what to look for in things that you personally think are funny. And I loved taking that class because he taught you how to be clean, and he always said, it doesn't matter if you're dirty, because like, you always have to be who you are. But know that if you want to be on TV back then, you need to have a 5-minute clean set. So like, you need to have the ability to do like a Tonight Show set, you know. And my first time on stage, I want to say, was Labor Day 2003. I still have video. It was on VHS that I had to convert to like an actual like video file, and every anniversary I posted online so that people could see the first time I went up on stage.
So was that was the graduation?
That was the
of his?
graduation of the class.
And what was the response of the people that you worked for? Was it like, wow, Cristela, you know?
No. No, actually, they were just like, oh, well, so you have to come in tomorrow at 9 a.m. like, you know, like they didn't care, you know? It was just like, you know.
And answer the phone.
Yeah, you know, because I think that, you know, it wasn't till later, and it actually wasn't till I moved out to LA that I realized that a lot of comics work at clubs, you know, trying to get stage time, and it's hard because the people they don't see you as a comic. They see you as the door guy. They see you as the guy that, you know, it's like, it takes a while in certain clubs, you know what I mean?
Where did you get to go up first when you came to LA? Did you just do a whole bunch of open mics?
I did a bunch of, I will tell you that, I actually tried, because I knew from working at the Improv, I knew the Improv people. I knew the office people, so like back then I knew the bookers and everybody that are now, some of them have moved on to like really cool things, they own clubs, and then some of them are like the head bookers of the club. Like it's funny to see them. Back in the day we used to talk to each other on Monday, get the numbers. But I remember I came to LA thinking that I could possibly go up at this club, the Hollywood Improv. Not as a real, like not on a real show or anything, but I thought I would come and do open mics and, what have you. And the person that I talked to that no longer works at the club told me that as a Latina, I had to go out to the bars and like build my setup there.
Because you were Latina?
Yes, because back then we didn't have Latino shows at the club. We had the Refried Fridays.
Right.
And that was very specific, and it was like a hard spot to get because they already had the lineup of recurring Latino comics, and no one knew me. Mm-hmm. So it was the first time that I realized moving to Los Angeles that Latino comedy was seen as a separate thing. Because in Dallas, I was the only Latino person doing stand-up. So I was just one of the comics, So
it's interesting. It's a sad commentary of that time.
Yeah.
That everybody was kind of pigeonholed into a black comic, a Latina
Absolutely.
comic, Asian comic, not a comic.
Yeah, and when you see a comic you like, you don't say like, man, Brian Regan is a great white comic.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it, so. So and it took me. I did Mexican restaurants. I did bars. I did any place that would have me. I did every hole in the wall. I did everything. I kept trying to do it, and I kept at it and kept at it. And I remember, I want to say, the first club that really welcomed me was Comedy and Magic in Hermosa. And they built me up, and that's my home club because they gave me a shot before anyone else did, And for me, that club is so different because you have to drive there. The demographic's weird because in LA clubs, you see a lot of tourists, you see a lot of like younger people that come in and out. It's like kind of like a thing to do. Like when you go to LA, it's like fun things to do, Comedy and Magic, they're all locals. There's a different demo than me because having been told that I was a Latina comic, it was really exciting for me to play quote unquote real audiences that were actually diverse.
I don't understand why you just didn't go to the barrio and just, play those clubs. I mean, you're a Latina.
I did.
You did that too.
I mean, honestly, I was like this close to having my closer be like, let's just beat the shit out of a piñata.
How did you handle that? Like, I mean, emotionally? I can't imagine, not having gone through anything like that. I hear it a lot from comics,
sure.
Ethnic comics, but intellectually or emotionally, I mean, you have to have some sort of bitterness about the whole thing, and at the same time, you have to put that aside if you want to keep going.
The comedy clubs that I play in Los Angeles are the ones that at one point started seeing me as a person. There are some clubs I don't like to perform at because they never saw me as a human being. Mm-hmm. And it was hard coming up because I made that as a choice where I didn't want to try to win someone's approval that was so against me because of what I was, that I was very limited on the stage time I could do, which is why I was doing hole-in-the-wall places a lot. There is a bitterness because you realize that a lot of people were getting opportunities that I wanted and thought it's not that I thought I deserved them, it's that I wanted the chance like everybody had, Mm-hmm. So there is a bitterness because then you realize I had to work so much to get the attention of people, but at the same time, if I stood out because I was the brown woman that made people laugh, mm-hmm. which made me more memorable in a way. So it's really it's weird how there's a double-edged sword. But I'll tell you, and this is actually, I I mean this, and it's so funny. The reason that I'm doing this podcast with you, Eddie, is because you were the first person in this club that actually treated me as a person, which is why I come and talk to you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
but
that.
It is this thing where every club needs somebody like that. Everybody needs somebody that can see comics as people that are really trying to do something. And I see that all the time with you, where people come and talk to you, and you're always so open and friendly with them, even when you're slammed. And to me, I think it's important that people in the comedy club world realize how important that is and how loyal comics become to certain places because of that treatment.
Well, I appreciate that. I find it very easy to be like that. I mean, that's me. But I also find
I have
it...
no idea what either one of you guys are talking about right now. No idea.
And you are?
Why are you here?
I obviously I speak to all comics, all different ethnicities, all everything, and every comic to me is the same. There's a struggle. It's whether you're black, brown, white, whatever. Unfortunately, if you're colored, black, brown, whatever, you do have it a lot harder. I mean, that's just a fact of life. If you don't believe that, just take a look around. But it's all comics, all people have basically the same struggle, except the degree of difficulty because of your ethnicity. And it's the comics that come in here. Look, I deal with open micers and everything, and some of them are annoying, some of them are whatever, but I respect the struggle they're going through and the fact that they've chosen what they're doing. And to me, it's look, your color, your whatever doesn't matter. You're a person, you're a comic.
Can you make them laugh?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
like at the end of the day, people forget. It doesn't matter what color skin you are, what minority you might be, what you look like. Can you actually make people laugh during a check drop?
Right.
That's what the clubs care about. Because it's like the clubs care about you once you have proven that you can do the job and entertain the people. So
and it's funny because if you do that, all of a sudden you're no longer Latina.
Yeah,
you're a comedian.
No, actually, Cristela.
You're no longer, yeah, exactly.
Now I have a name.
It's funny.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you a quick little story. I'm Jewish. When I was in college, I sat across the table. I had a job in a library, talking to this kid for 6 months who just constantly put the Jews down, and I never told him that I was Jewish until 6 months later. And I said to him, do you know that I'm Jewish? This is after he's said every derogatory thing about Jews or whatever, and I just let him go on. And he said, yeah, but you're different. And it's like, no, I'm not. It's just that now you know me.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with anybody else, any color, whatever. And I've always taken that to heart and realized that no matter who it is, whether you're black, brown, white, gray, blue.
Yeah.
When you get to know somebody, you'll find out they're just like you.
Yeah, it's as different as we are. We have so many things in common. I mean, we are alike, but we are all connected. We have so many. I mean, we come from very similar backgrounds. Regardless of race, it could be economic status. It could be, it could be culturally. It could be the food you like. You find the common ground, you know. And
we're people.
Exactly.
It's really that simple. So how did you get here to the Improv?
Oh, that's an interesting story. Let's see. I actually was opening for a really big comic who I never mentioned their name, because things ended badly.
Come on.
Well, I moved to Los Angeles because Carlos Mencia asked me to open for him.
Right.
So
okay.
So I was his opener. I was his opener for a couple years, and his agent tried to hip pocket me. So basically, that means that they'll sign you. They won't sign you, but they'll throw you a bone every now and then.
Right.
So one year, he got me a set at the Melrose Improv, here at the Hollywood Improv. And I was so nervous. And I went up and I did well. And I thought, man, I'm going to start going up at the Improv. Nope. I didn't start. No. I think the next set I didn't get a set here for like another year or so.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm very generous when I say another year because it was a long time.
A lot longer.
And, it was this thing where at that time when I was opening for Mencia, he had multiple openers. And I always refused to use his name as a credit because I never wanted to be seen as someone's opener. So, I wanted to build up my own, because that was the thing with a lot of openers, and I'm not sure if it's still the case now, but there's comics that have like set openers and their credit is that they open for that person.
Right.
But your stand-up isn't about you opening for this person, hopefully, so it's like this thing where it's like, well, I get that, but who are you? So for me, I would tell everybody at the Mexican bars and the restaurants and everything, like, don't mention that I opened for this guy. Just say my name. And I still do that now. When people ask me for credits, I'm like, no, just say I'm a regular here, or just like,
Yeah.
I don't need credits. Like, they'll see what I can do on stage. Like, they're not gonna be like, whoa, we need to take care of this person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like,
It's interesting that you say that, but at the same time, so many people, let's say the audience, that's what they want to know. They want to know, like, did you write for this person? Did you open for this person or whatever? But to want to do it just totally on your own is a little harder.
well, I'll tell you
when
this
you
much.
can't.
You're right about the credits. When you get that big credit, you want to say that that's your credit because you feel established. I will tell you, though, that my experience has been that the credits in a show like the ones we do here, where it's a revolving, where it's kind of just like a free-for-all, where it's like, not a themed night where you can see anybody. It's been my experience that my credits actually don't matter because they see me as the brown girl that's on stage.
Really?
So the credits don't matter because I still need to work really hard to get them to laugh.
You're right, and yet if you look around in the world of theater, of acting, there are so many actors that people do not know are of Latino heritage.
Absolutely.
That play the roles of white people
Sure.
or whatever, and nobody knows, which is really just another point of people not knowing but should know that people are people.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter. I mean, the one guy that always comes to mind, I believe, is Stephen Bauer. Is it Stephen Bauer?
I suck with names, so let's say it is.
Who's Mexican, yet I've never ever seen him play a Mexican,
Sure.
and which is great, which is fine. It's people. We're all a very unfortunately segregated society still.
We have a lot to learn. I mean, I learned that with my TV show. Like when I got the TV show on the air, people would always ask me, well, why do you think it took so long to get another Latino show on the air? Because I think the last one before mine was George Lopez.
Right.
And my answer was always the same. It's like, well, it's just really hard to get a TV show on the air, period. Like, you notice it because I'm darker than most people. So, like, George Lopez was darker, but it's like a lot of white people try to develop shows that don't go, and they don't say, like, why, how did you, white woman, get another show? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's because we stand out,
Well, yes, you do, and it's funny. I don't look at you that way.
No, exactly. And, and honestly, I think that, it's also, it's really interesting because I still have to battle. Now, look at what I've done in terms of like credits. So I had a TV sitcom. I wrote on it. I starred on it. It was named after me, Cristela. I have a Netflix special, lower classy. It's I was the first Latina to star in a Pixar movie, Cars 3, right? All of these things that sound amazing. But let me tell you that what I have found a struggle with as a comic is that when people want to market me, they want to market me to Spanish speakers. Mm-hmm. Even though my stand-up is in English, even though my show was in English, Pixar Cars 3 was in English, the Netflix special blew me away because the Netflix special was kind of distributed by Netflix Latin America. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was this thing where because I was Latina, and I get that, and it's this thing where just in the industry side, we have so much to do where we don't have to categorize in such a specific manner because I always said, but I speak English. I was born in the United States. My stand-up is in English. Why can't, and it's not that I'm saying well, Netflix did this. It's in general, that's just that's changing it. Has to think, the thought process has to think.
Yeah, it does. The thought process hopefully someday will totally change. And it's still, I would imagine, even though you may still be looked at as a Latina because you are a Latina, it's your talent is what's getting you where you're going.
Yeah.
It's which brings me to Cars 3.
Yes.
How did you get to Cruz Ramirez?
That was actually funny. I had no idea that I was auditioning for it or being considered for it. One day, I got a call. My show had just been canceled, and The View had asked me to become a permanent host. And I said no. And people on at ABC were basically like, oh, no. She wants more money. So they offered me more money, and I said no. And I finally had to say to the point, I had to be so, I had to be
direct
completely that I was like, look, I don't want it. It's not where I am right now. I want to do stand-up. I want to do what I do. I don't want to be locked into one studio audience every day. I'm not there yet. I need to go out and do shows. I'm still so young. At that point, the TV show was my first big break. Mm-hmm. So why am I settling to be on The View? It's and all I learned from that experience was that I have what it takes to do daytime. That's what I learned. So I'm like, that will always be there. I know that I'm capable of doing that. I can go explore something else and come back to that. Everybody thought I was crazy for turning down The View. They were just like, so much money, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's not about the money. It doesn't matter if you have money. If you're depressed and you hate what you're doing, the money doesn't matter. And I told them, trust me, this isn't for me. I don't know what's going to come, but something will come that will show you that this wasn't for me. 2 weeks later, this agent at WME emailed me and said, hey, random question, do you want to go meet with people at Pixar? And I was like, well, this is random for what? They wouldn't tell me the project. They wouldn't tell me anything. Basically, they said, Pixar wants to give you a tour of Pixar. And I was like, yeah, why? Who wouldn't want to go to Pixar? You're like, of course. I guess this is random. And I kept thinking, do they do this with random people? That's how cool of a company they are. They pull someone from Facebook. They're like, hey, you want a tour to Pixar. And I was about to go on the road for 2 weeks to do a tour of Canada for Just for Laughs. So I told them, well, I have this tour planned. So if we can do it in the next 2 days, I guess I can go see Pixar. It was so random.
I'm a little busy, but excuse me.
So I went up to, they flew me up to Pixar, to the studio in Emeryville. And they made me sign a form saying that I couldn't talk about what I'd see in the tour, because they're so hush-hush. And they gave me this private tour, and they showed me things that, the public normally doesn't know that they have at the building. And I thought, well, this is really cool. And then they stopped and they're like, let's go have lunch. And I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking like, I'm thinking that I'm like Charlie from the Willy Wonka.
Fries,
I'm like, did I get the golden ticket? And then they put me in this office and they start showing me pictures and they start telling me the story of Cars 3. Not telling me that I'm still auditioning for it. And then I'm like, well, that's cool. Good luck with that. Like, I have no
Thank
idea
you very
why they're
much.
doing.
Can you fly me back
Yeah,
down?
like,
I have to go on
no
tour.
idea.
Yeah.
And then they said, then they brought the character up, and they're like, Cruz Ramirez, and I was like, okay. They're like, can you go into the booth and do these lines? And I thought, wait, I'm auditioning for this? Like, I had no idea. And I went in, and I did it, and that was basically
That
it.
was
Like,
it.
they flew me out. And I remember calling like my friends and saying,
I think
that-
I just auditioned.
yeah,
for
I
Cars
did. I'm
3.
like, I just like got a surprise audition at Pixar when I was at Pixar, which makes so sense that I was touring Pixar, you know. And I days passed, and I was in Toronto, and I was starting the tour, and I got a call. It was funny because I remember the moment. My identity had been stolen, so they had to freeze my debit card. I didn't have cash on me. I was just about to go on this tour. I had to, I think at that time I was with like Wells Fargo. So I was looking up a branch in Canada.
Mike, you can return her identity now.
So like I found a Wells Fargo location. I had to walk because I didn't have any money for a cab or anything. It was like 2 miles. I get there and it's not a bank. It's like real estate. Like they do loans. They have no ATM. Couldn't help me, and I had no way
This
of.
is in Canada?
Yeah, in Toronto.
And what year is this?
This is 2015. So yeah.
Okay.
So I had no access to my money. I couldn't get a debit card. I couldn't do anything. I sat outside of Wells Fargo and bawled, and I just cried because I didn't know what I was gonna do. And I remember I got the call at that moment. I was crying, and they told me that I had gotten the Cruz Ramirez role. And instead of being happy, I got so mad because I was like, "Of course this fucking happens right now!" Because I couldn't really enjoy the moment because I was
Right.
feeling so bad.
Oh,
you know?
that's too bad. Now
So I went to the hotel and I saw Robert Kelly, and I was like, "Bobby, guess what happened?" And he was like the guy that kind of like pumped me up on it, and like it was so cool to be like, I love Bobby. Robert Kelly's awesome, and he's just got such a great energy that I was like, he made me enjoy that moment there. You know what I mean? And I was like, at that moment, I'm like, it was so great that I shared that with another comic,
Right.
Like, cause he understood. You know?
That's great. And you got to, I assume, work up there at, is that George Lucas's?
No, it's Emeryville. It's actually the Pixar Animation Studios, and that was my commute. So like they would fly me. I would have to drive to LAX. I would take the 10 o'clock flight on Southwest to Oakland. They would get a car, take me to Pixar. I would do the lines. I'd be back. I'd get the plane. I want to say at like 3:15 or like 4 o'clock. I'd fly back to LA, and that was the end of my day. So when the roles started, it was pretty small. And then when I would go up there, we would break for lunch, and I'd have lunch with everybody, and then we would have snacks. And during the lunch and snacks, I started telling them about how I grew up in McAllen, Texas, and they totally loved this like story like that I was telling them about someone who really wanted to do this weird dream that nobody understood, and it was just kind of like, trust me on this, because I would tell my family this all the time, like, you guys, I know it makes no sense to you, but trust me, if I can do this, it's gonna pay off for everyone. Like, we're gonna be in a different level. Like, I'm gonna be able to take you guys to like a place that you guys haven't been on, you know, that we have never even knew existed.
Even though you're Latina, yeah.
You know, so it was like this thing where I started telling them stories, and then I wasn't allowed to get the script, so I would only get the script when I was in the studio.
Right.
And I started seeing my story in the movie.
Oh, wow.
So and it was funny because there was this big moment, because Pixar's known for the tearjerker speeches, they wrote a story. I told them a speech I gave to my mom, and they wrote it in the movie, and they wouldn't let me read it, and they saved it to the end, and they said, "This is our last scene of the day. We want you to do it. Just do it straight through." And I did it, and I got so emotional in it because I was discovering that they used my story at the time that I was recording it.
Wow.
And that was the take that they used in the movie.
Boy, that God, I mean, that's a lot of insight on their part too.
That's what they do. That's why,
Yeah.
it was such an amazing thing because it was so collaborative. And then, again, I was just going to be a small side character, but the role expanded and the role grew to the point where I was the lead in the movie with Owen Wilson.
How'd you feel? I mean, as a person with all that happening and the fact that they did this
Yeah.
about you, for you, whatever.
I actually, I didn't think anything of it because I'm so used to accepting so little that such a grand gesture was so lost on me because I couldn't understand that anybody would see anything great in me.
Well, you need to open yourself up.
It's
because
hard,
people-
it's a
yeah.
lifetime of that. It's like, you start realizing that and you hope to change, but it's hard to deprogram, 40 years of that kind of thinking.
But there are people that see you for what you are.
It's
the
hard.
great talent. Yeah, I'm sure it is. It's not easy.
I'm trying to
you know?
learn, Eddie. I'm
Yeah.
really trying to accept it. But, it's baby steps.
Yeah, it's got to be a tough process. It can't be easy.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes you have to say to yourself, "Let me accept this."
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to use the term earned it, but I've been so. I've worked
But you
hard.
put in the work.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've worked hard.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I want to do. Somebody actually saw in me something that maybe I would never have put out there to begin with, and they've taken advantage of it for you.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's hard for us to accept good sometimes.
Well, I this is kind of how I approach stand-up overall. Like for me, I've always told people, like, when I talk to comics and they say that they want to be rich and famous, I'm like, get out. This isn't for you. Mm-hmm. Because when anyone ever says that they want to do something for money and fame, I always believe that you're setting yourself up for failure because how much money is enough and how much fame is enough? Because you want vague ideas.
Right.
For me, I have been so used to losing that when I win, I don't understand what's happening. And that's actually something that I've been working on for the past couple years. I started going to therapy about it because I don't think that anything I do is special. Because I listen to all the people that I grew up bullied. I grew up the poor kid in the neighborhood and everything. And you start learning that, you start believing that, well, if I can do it, anyone can do it. Because who am I? You know what I mean? So
But that part's not true, and
that's really hard to accept, though, Eddie.
Is it real? As your new therapist here, is it a battle for acceptance? Period. As a person, as opposed to being accepted as a Latina.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know how to answer that. I'll tell you that I've been doing stand-up for about 15, 16 years, and every time I go into a club, like every time I come into the Improv, because I'm on a show, there's always this feel of like the imposter syndrome, where people will find out that I'm not, that I don't belong there. And I think that a lot of it also has to do with the fact that when I was coming up, I didn't have stand-up friends. I didn't have the community like I see people, where they know each other and stuff. Now they know me. Mm-hmm. I didn't have that growing up. Like coming up in LA, I didn't have that. So it was always that's why if you've noticed, like when I come in, if I don't hang out with you, I leave. I don't hang out at the clubs because I never had anyone to hang out with. Nobody would talk to me.
Does that make you stronger? I think the fact that you didn't grow up with other stand-up people, or not so much grow up even in your young adulthood.
You know, I don't know, because it's like I don't know what it's like to actually have that group of people that you're like, oh, hey, let's go do this, da da da. I can tell you that years ago I heard Chris Rock did an interview where he was talking about how like comics, there's a lot of comics that have like their buddies, you know, and it's all about their buddies and stuff. But he's talking about how like stand up in the end is it's a singular thing. You do it on your own.
Oh, definitely.
You know, so for me, I want to say that it felt very lonely for a very long time. And at times it still does, because that's how I came up. But I'll tell you, it did make me focus on the work a lot, because that was all I had. I didn't keep doing stand up because I had so many friends that I was having a great time. I stayed in stand up because I loved it so much that I wouldn't let not having friends keep me from doing what I wanted to do.
So did stand up sort of become, or has it become like sort of a therapy for you, in a sense that you release things, you say things?
Yeah, and actually I think that's been one of the, again, it's really hard to, I always say that I have like low self-esteem because it has half the calories of regular self-esteem. but it comes
Well,
from
you
like...
shouldn't. Let me tell you that. You really shouldn't have low self-esteem.
It's just,
I know. It's a personal thing, but you've accomplished a lot. You really have, and you're doing well. And I hope, and the sky's the limit. It's not like you've hit any kind of ceiling.
No. And actually, I'll tell you that it wasn't till after my show got canceled. I did like a thank you tour, and I went on the road and thanked everybody that watched my show for watching it. And I did a meet and greet after every show, and I met everybody that was a fan of the show, and I thanked them all for watching. Because to me, that was so important and so special.
That's the way you, as you said, you say thank you to your fans, but your fans also realize that you appreciate them.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you're like, I depend on you.
Absolutely. It's a weird thing, because also it just, it's like people don't understand. I have accidentally tapped into a demo that is my family, which are like blue collar Latinos that are, I have a mix of a lot of people because of the work I do in like the advocacy space, where it's a lot of like activists, it's a lot of like college educated professors that are Latinos, everybody that seems like they never were really represented.
I want to take a little bit of an issue with that, in the sense that you had, a couple of weeks ago, you had a show here.
Yes.
And you sold that show out.
Yes.
And it wasn't sold out with just Latinos.
Right.
It was sold out with everybody.
Yeah.
So it's not just that. It's you're appealing to maybe blue collar.
Yeah,
but
no, definitely.
Blue collar crossing the lines.
Sure.
They're realizing that you are who you are, that you're not Cristela the Latina.
Right. No.
You're Cristela the performer. You're Cristela the comedian, and you're appealing to the general public.
Sure, but at the same time, I like to focus on the Latinos that show up to the shows like that.
And that's okay.
Because, again, I still do meet and greets after every show, and I don't charge because I don't understand the idea of charging for meet and greets. Like, not yet. I don't understand it. Hey, I have to throw that disclaimer, because if they hear that, like,
Next level.
just in case,
Next
FYI.
level, yeah.
No, but I get Latinas that after the show get so emotional when they get to say hi to me. And it's because, it might be because of what I talk about. And it might be a certain issue. It might be something that they feel like, I get a lot of the, I can relate to you. I have never heard anyone talk about that like you do. And for me, I feel like I have to be responsible in taking care of them and making sure that they're represented by being honest to myself. And when I focus, like for me, I've always said, look, I did the college circuit for years, and I was booked in Iowa, Wisconsin, like Nebraska. People would always say, but you're not playing to any Latinos. I'm
Right.
like, yeah, but I'm also blue collar, and I'm also Catholic, and I'm also like, it's like, it doesn't matter, that's
also
why.
a person.
Yeah, so for me, it's like we can find a way to connect to everybody, but I also want to make sure I have a lot of people that follow me that go to my shows that had never been to stand-up clubs before. They didn't know stand-up comedy existed, and because of my show or however they found me, they started going to comedy clubs, and it's this thing because like even me as a job, I didn't know it was a job. So how do they know that it's a pastime that they can do for fun if they haven't had that person to connect with?
Well, your inner struggle or whatever is like, I think it's sort of like every woman.
Yeah.
In the sense that you're not alone. Everybody and probably a lot of Latinos, a lot of Latinas see in you what they wish to become, and that you are breaking borders, breaking ceilings, what have you.
Yeah.
Where it's like, just because you're brown skinned doesn't
Sure.
mean you can't accomplish what any white skinned person or whatever.
That's actually why that's why I called my stand-up special Lower Classy, because I actually wanted to focus on the economic status, and how for me, I didn't approach where I came from necessarily from a strictly Latino culture, because I grew up with all Latinos. We didn't really have diversity. Everybody was Mexican American or Mexican in my
Right.
hometown. So we were never the Latinos doing this. We were just like Chris doing this, da da da, But it's that thing where I forgot what I was saying. What is it?
Lower classy.
Oh, lower classy. I didn't want people to think that it was me being Latina talking about Latino things, because I wanted people to know there's always that common ground, like we keep talking about. And my common ground, what I was trying to talk about was underrepresented communities that have nothing, that come from nothing. I come from nothing, and now I have something. And for me,
Again, Cristela, I'm going to take a little bit of issue. You don't come from nothing. You come from love. I get the feeling you have a family or had a family that loved you very much.
We're very close.
And it's like a lot of people don't have that.
Sure.
And so that's like, that is more sometimes than having a lot of money.
no, it's true. But my family, we were squatters for the first 7 years of my life. So we were practically homeless. We lived in an abandoned diner. So for me,
Oh, that was my wait a second. What?
we grew up. My mom was the first woman in her family to leave her husband, because we were good Catholic people. And she left when she was pregnant with me. And second grade education, undocumented, didn't know where to go, found an empty building, moved us in there with nothing, and we grew up in this abandoned diner. So for me, like when I say nothing, I literally mean like all we had was each other, So it was this thing where I struggle, where people don't believe that I grew up that poor because I speak so well. And it's this thing where it's like, well, but you seem so smart. And it's like, well, yeah, like when you go to school, you
I
learn
am
the same
smart.
alphabet.
Right.
They're not like, hey, poor people, shorten 4 letters from, like it doesn't happen.
You have a book coming out, do you not?
Yes, I do.
And is that book? Have you named that book, by the way? We've talked about the naming of this book. Do you have a title for this book yet?
Yes, and actually, I love that you actually asked me about that, because I have to go on record that a lot of the brainstorming for the title of the book happened at this bar with Eddie, with Paige Hurwitz, with
Her evil twin.
with a combination of different voices
Yes.
contributing. I came in, and every time I would come in a certain time frame, I would like Eddie would ask me, and I'm like, "This is what I got," and I would pitch him the ideas, and nobody loved any of them. Like we couldn't decide on a title. So the title is "Music to My Years."
To my years.
Years. It's a mixtape memoir of growing up and standing up. So basically, the book is a mixtape that I made of some of the songs that influenced my life, and each chapter is the name of the song. I break down because I love music. So I break down why I love that song, whether it be how it started, the instruments, the feel, whatever. I break it down on the artist who did it, because some people don't know everybody. And then I connect the story to that song from the time of my life that.
Can you give us one or two of those songs?
Yeah.
I mean,
Like, actually,
I think this is a tremendously interesting idea.
I did Billy Joel's "Only the Good Die Young" because I'm a big Billy Joel fan, and that chapter is about me growing up in such a Catholic household that I didn't lose my virginity till I was 21, and I was never allowed to learn about sex because we were so religious. So, I talk about how completely ignorant I was, and like all the mistakes and things I thought. I used to think that you would get pregnant from kissing people. Because,
You're not alone, believe me. I've heard that before.
So,
not that I've thought about that.
But I would see the Mexican soap operas. And the Mexican soap operas, they would have these scenes where they would kiss, the leads would kiss, and then like the next day she was pregnant. So it was kind of like, oh, well, like, that's how you get pregnant. Like, so that's a chapter. Another one is actually, let me think of a good one. I actually talk about Ice Cube's "It Was a Good Day." And I talk about that song because that song came out when I was in junior high, and this was well before the internet. And because my family was so poor, it used to be cool to learn the words to songs, and that you would show off that you knew the lyrics especially when it had just come out, because it's like, whoa, how did you learn the lyrics? So I would record the music from, like my little boombox into the cassette, where you would catch the beginning and endings of the radio announcers,
Right.
And I would sit down in my little notebook and I would rewind and just write down the words. And I remember the song that I learned was the song called "Informer" by Snow. And that was a really big hit. And it was like a super fast, it was like a Canadian reggae artist. And it was like, "Informer, so that I'm Snow." And so it was like confusing. I would write down the lyrics.
I just want to let me interrupt a second. Everybody know that you happen to be, I just learned this a month or two ago. What a great singer you are.
Yeah.
I actually you were sitting here. In fact, I think you were sitting right here.
Yeah, this is one of my chairs.
With Craig Robinson.
Yes.
And you were like, all of a sudden you started singing, and I'm turning around going like, I'm looking, is there somebody behind her singing this? You have a magnificent voice.
Well, thank you. And it comes from me wanting to do musical theater, but being told that I was limited because I was Latina. So it's, what do I do with this voice if I can't be in any shows, So like I used to write out lyrics, and in junior high, I learned that song, and the kids at school wanted the words. So I started charging them $5 for me to write out the lyrics.
But you won't charge people for a meet and greet.
I know.
I love this. This is great.
Well, because I was poor. I needed food. But like I would actually, and what's weird is that I never understood why they didn't think about like Xeroxing and making copies to each other, like the friends.
Right.
But I didn't care. Like I was getting $5 a pop, so I'd write down the copies and da-da-da. And then people would start asking me like, hey, like, do you have the words to so-and-so? And I would say like, oh yeah, man, I totally do. Didn't have them, right? But I would get like, I'm like, I'll have them to you in 2 days. And then I would go home and do that specific song. I'm like, here you go. And I did Ice Cube's It Was a Good Day because to me, that was a time where my family slowly started getting into a little better space. And it was, which later on ended up being like credit card debt. We were like, you know what I mean? But, like,
It's the American way.
absolutely. But it was this moment where I realized in 8th grade, I would listen to the song, to Ice Cube's Today, It Was a Good Day. And I would imagine what my version of a good day was. Because in the song, he would break down his good day. And in the chapter, I describe what my day really was and what what I would have loved my day to have been. So that's the book, you know, and it's 12 songs, and it's just every song I'm a big fan of, and it takes you through this journey where you really get a sense of where I come from, and you realize, I think it's a pretty exact representation of me. I wrote the book. I wrote every word, you know, of it. So if you know me and you read the book, it makes total sense why I am the way I am.
Well, I'll be the judge of that. Do you have a release date?
I do. It's October 8th. And
cool. Not far away
yeah,
at all.
It's October 8th, and it's up for pre-orders and right now. And I'll
And
be
the
doing
title again?
Music to My Years.
Music to My Years.
It's available
with a Y.
everywhere. And then October 8th, I go on a tour for the rest of the year promoting it.
Well, this has been great, Cristela. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invite, Eddie.
Oh, are you kidding? I want to thank you for coming. This has been a lot more informative than I expected.
Oh, yeah?
And it's just been great. I want to have you back. I hope at some point.
Oh, yeah, totally.
To go on, even without your evil twin, when I'm going to have the two of you on together at some point. But thank you so much.
Oh, thank you,
I really
Eddie.
appreciate it.
Thank you for asking and letting me speak. It means a lot.
Oh, could I stop you?
Well, you know, that's again part of my charm, Eddie.
That's
Part
it.
of my charm.
All righty. Until next time, guys. Thank you.